Bungie has responded to the exotic armor leaks that happened yesterday in Destiny 2. If you don't know what I'm talking about, when Festival of the Lost and Update 7.2.5 went live, there were a variety of exotic armor changes, at least in the text section of the exotic armor pieces. None of these changes have actually gone into effect yet though. They are all set for Season 23, and so a lot of people were perplexed by these changes, like Stompies have damage resistance in the air now, so Bungie themselves have decided to respond to this, saying this right here: some exotic armor changes coming in Season 23 were shown earlier than anticipated, and we wanted to take a moment to clarify a few things. What has been shown is not the full scope of exotic armor and tuning changes coming next season, which is definitely interesting, means that there's going to be more exotic armor changes than just the ones that we've seen so far. And if you're wondering which exotic armors were changed and have different text, I'm going to cover that later on in this video, so stay tuned. The unintended preview is a small part of larger tweaks on the way for all classes that we're excited to share soon, and I'm definitely excited to hear more about this. From what it seems like with, for example, the Karnstein armlets for the Warlocks, it seems like they're trying to take the verbiage from the different affinities and apply those into the exotics. Previously, Karnstein had a type of healing that was its own unique type of healing. Instead, they added the verbiage of cure and restoration into it, and I think that that's what they're going to do with all future exotic armor pieces to simplify and make them more mainstream and easier to understand for all players, especially new players. The next part reads, while the descriptions of some of the exotic armor were updated, they will still function as they did with the 7.2.5 update until Season 23 begins. And this is already confirmed by myself. I tested all these exotic armor pieces. Nothing has actually changed yet, but with the new text, we can definitely clarify and understand what these new exotic armor pieces are going to be like in Season 23, which is definitely exciting. The last bit they read is, the exception to what will function as they did prior to this update is the changes made to a Hamakar spine and Antaeus wards, which were intended for this release. So obviously we had the harsh nerf to Antaeus wards because they were plaguing PvP, and Hamakar's spine got nerfed because they're so OP in PvP. It kind of affected it in PvE a little bit. Now let's jump into and look at all of the exotic armor text changes that are currently in the game right now that will go live in Season 23. So for Stompy specifically, it reads, take less damage from combatants when airborne, which sounds really crazy, but it's very important to keep in mind that the word combatants is specific to PvE enemies and has nothing to do with PvP. Obviously, it'd be pretty crazy if people were jumping around in PvP and had damage resistance while in the air, but in PvE this should be pretty cool because you'll slap on your Stompies when you're trying to run through an activity, and when you jump in the air you'll get some damage resistance. Obviously we'll have to test just how much. If I had to guess, it would probably be a pretty small amount. I doubt we're gonna be looking at like woven mail level damage resistance here, but still is very cool and a nice overall change to the Stompies in my opinion. And keep in mind that I actually tested this out. This is not currently active in the game right now. It's just a leak from Bungie. They gave us the text early. The next exotic armor piece we need to talk about that's getting a buff is Shards of Galleon, which previously were very OP in Destiny 2 and were nerfed substantially. It had the added text right here, which reads, throwing knife final blows decrease the cooldown of your super. So that's going to be really epic for hunters out there. You'll be able to throw your knives, blow up enemies. This will decrease your super regeneration, and then when you do get your super, you're going to throw your blade barrage at enemies, and it reads, of course, like it does previously, hits and final blows with blade barrage will return super energy after the super ends. So this should be a very nice buff to the Shards of Galleon exotic gauntlets for the hunter. The next exotic we're talking about is for Titans. Of course, the Synth Theps have been announced that they're getting nerfed, which is they're removing the melee lunge distance that you get when meleeing enemies with them. The melee lunge range has been kind of buggy in Destiny 2 for a long time. The hit registration with it is very wonky, makes it difficult for enemies to melee you back when you're using Synth Theps. And Bungie recently removed the melee lunge range from the Ophidian aspect for Warlocks, and so naturally they're now going to remove them from Synth Theps, and instead in their place they're going to give them improved weapon handling and reload speed. Now let's look at the next exotic. The next exotic change we're going to cover are the Mechaneer's Trick Sleeves for the hunters. This one will add for your sidearms, of course, an increase to airborne effectiveness, which is something that Bungie's been adding to a lot of different weapons in the game. But on top of that, the last one is really interesting, which is while this effective is active, sidearm final blows reload the weapon and extend the effect's duration. Previously, Mechaneer's Trick Sleeves would buff your damage to your sidearms when you're critically wounded, but it had a short timer, and when the timer ran out, it was over. Now you're going to have the ability to get this effect to activate and maintain that effect by getting final blows, which sounds really exciting and honestly should be really good for sidearms inside PvE. I'm definitely looking forward to taking this one out for a spin when this goes live. Bungie is also changing the exotic Warlock gauntlets, the Karnstein armlets. These are already very powerful in the game, and the change looks very promising. Vampire's Caress now reads melee and finisher final blows instantly grant cure and provide restoration for a short duration. This is going to be really strong because of course if you can get the melee kill, that's really nice, but when you're in challenging endgame content, it can be very difficult to melee finish enemies and be extremely risky, but finisher final blows are much easier, especially when you see the little bubble above their head. You know that you can pull off the finisher, and you can put on mods that also give you an overshield when doing that finisher, so definitely significantly safer. I'm very happy that they added finishers into the Karnstein armlets, and the ability to grant cure on top of restoration should feel really good for these exotic gauntlets. These will easily be one of the best for survivability, and will probably be a go-to option now for the final shape raid for a lot of you warlocks out there. I'm not exaggerating, this is really good for survivability. And the last exotic that we have to cover is the Celestial Nighthawk. The change to this is actually perfect, and if you've enjoyed the video this far, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. The update that Bungie is giving is precision final blows reduce the cooldown of your super, which means that you're gonna run around with the Celestial Nighthawk on rather than swapping to it before the DPS phase. And the reason why is because all you have to do is just get precision final blows on enemies, and in doing so it'll reduce the cooldown of your super, so you'll be able to get more Celestial Nighthawk supers. And I'm actually a big fan of this one. For so long now, no one has ever ran Celestial Nighthawk other than to swap to it for damage. It's good that Bungie has finally paid attention to that and is actually giving it an appropriate change so that it has some upside when you don't have your super. I love all these changes, I'm looking forward to them. Let me know down in the comments below which change are you looking forward to the most. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video, and click on the screen here to watch another one from the channel. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Later.